Welcome to Never Not Here, Down Under. My name's David Rivers. I'm the author of a book called The Dance of Stillness, which explores the nature of spiritual awakening. And I am delighted to have today as my guest, Richard Miller. Richard Miller is in Australia on his Australian tour as part of his Never Not Here TV program. And Richard has spontaneously called in to our home, and he's staying as a guest for a while. We've set up a makeshift studio in our basement, and I'd like to welcome Richard, on whom I'm turning the tables. Richard is going to be the interviewee, and I shall be the interviewer. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, David, and thanks for this great invitation to be in Wall's End, close to Newcastle. And thank you for introducing me to your family, your father Robert and Tassa and
Baby Grace.
Baby Grace.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's wonderful to have you here. Well, it's a great surprise.
We always said we were going to meet, but we didn't know when or how, right? But then, bingo, the day came, and
yeah,
it happened even before we knew it hit us.
Yeah, it did. It was funny. I was resting, and I thought to myself, it popped into my head, I wonder what Richard Miller's up to. He's still in Australia. And I checked your site, and I saw the fantastic interview with Swami Shankarananda, and I was so happy to see that you finally got to spend some time with him, and it looked like a fantastic interview. I haven't finished watching it yet. And, within the hour, we had arranged for you to come and stay here.
Don't take long. Yeah, Shankarananda, I owe that to you. 2 weeks I stayed in the ashram. Whoa, very powerful experience.
Yeah. You're the creator of Never Not Here, and your program explores spiritual awakening, and you explore consciousness and what is life and what is important in life with all kinds of people, and many of whom have radical perspectives, many of whom are modern day Buddhas and modern day yogis who've actually touched on these transcendent states of awareness that mystics and yogis and philosophers throughout the ages, across all cultures, people have explored the inherent potential of the human being. And we've explored it at all levels, and I guess you explore it spiritually. So
sometimes for me, they're not radical enough,
Okay. Well, I want to know, how did you come to be on, specifically on the journey that you're on with the broadcasting, and beyond that, where did your spiritual journey begin, and what would you like to say to me about your own spiritual approach, your own spiritual life?
Well, the broadcasting, how did that begin? It began by actually just kind of organically, one step at a time. And sometimes by grace, because sometimes I just did something that I didn't even want to do, and then that led me to somewhere else, and that led me somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And in a way, the real start of Never Not Here was just a chance. Mm-hmm. And then when it finally kind of came true, or close to being true, I was trying to back out of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so then that's interesting. What made me, why did I want to just keep that up? Why did I want to?
Yeah. Why? What is it, service for you?
No, that was nothing. That was like, some other force had me doing that. I don't even say it's a force, but I mean, there was just like no reason to do it. I was too busy to do it. All these other the things that compose our usual no's. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, oh, well, I'll do it anyway, with no goal to follow it through. This was to become certified as a public access TV producer.
Yeah. I heard you've said that to me once before. Yeah. So then you went and did the course to learn how to do this and get certified to run programs for public access TV, and things, once you had the skills, life just took you on this journey.
See, it wasn't even the skills, because I could maybe do it with video cameras, and somehow I could paste it together, and I was learning editing on my own and all that stuff. But it was just the fact that I would be in some kind of a organization, like certified just means that I would be able to submit programs to them. And so then when I submitted a couple of programs, it was a bit before I made any, but when I submitted a couple and they said, okay, we'll give you a weekly slot. And then that was kind of like what did it, because a weekly slot, I didn't have to come up with 52 shows, because they let you repeat a certain amount of times. But I had to come up with, 12 or 20 or something like that. And so then that's when I started.
Wow. So if we back up a little, in the spiritual sense, what led you to have the theme that we find with Never Not Here? From my understanding, what I can gather, there's a strong theme of the non-dual traditions with the path of Advaita, although you certainly open yourself to all kinds of spiritual approaches. But where were you at in your own spiritual life, or however you want to term it, your spiritual quest within yourself prior to what was the context of your spiritual life that this emerged within?
Because you asked me a little bit how I started or what really broke me loose, I could say a couple of things probably were key in breaking me loose. One was that my grandmother had cancer of the breast and didn't know how long she was going to live, and my great-grandmother got her to be a Christian Scientist. This was when I was 7 years old or something like that, or even earlier, but 7, my dad decided to join that church. So that's a church that believes in healing by knowing something more true than what the appearance is. And I'm not really saying that is I was ever a Christian Scientist, but just that idea that what you see is not necessarily true already was a foundation for a lot of flexibility in my life.
Okay. So how old were you when that?
Well, let's say from 7 to 17, because then I didn't like it anymore. I didn't want to go to church and stuff like that. But just those years, we started, in the Christian Science Sunday schools, let's say, and they started to say, well, we're really pure spirit. We're really God's perfect child. We're really God's perfection. We're really all health, And then somehow, I never did really see how that would heal you, but somehow, you know what I mean? Like, so many philosophies of living, of life, from childhood onward is like, oh, this is a cruel world, and look at it out there. There's evidence of it everywhere. And here we were saying that, well, what you see is not necessarily what's true.
Okay. What was the... so did that seed of the idea that maybe there's something deeper than the appearance, did that lead you somewhere in terms of how did that unfold, or what was the progression within your consciousness and your mind from that seed? How did that seed flower?
I don't think it ever flowered, and it didn't really give me any specific thing. It just gave me a certain flexibility and a willingness to confront things that others might say, no, that's obvious. That's not, don't even have to question that here.
Okay. Yeah.
And so let's see, what else can I say about it? It had a positive spin always. So that was helpful too, because like if we were saying, no, we're really the truth of God, well, we didn't really dwell on the negative. We didn't say we're really the truth of the devil or something like that, or we didn't really consider that there's the forces of good and evil. And, we didn't deny it either, but we didn't really put our attention on that part. So then I would say my whole life more or less had a positive spin on it. And maybe even to the point of dismissing the negative, really, and I thought, well, that's weird. Is that getting us anywhere? But you know what I mean? In other words, we had a kind of a leaning toward positivity,
and that there's something deeper than the appearance. And so was that the main contact you had with spiritual teachings prior to creating Never Not Here, or?
No. That's just like really the root. That's one of the roots, probably.
Okay. So when I say what,
like what gave me a mentality that I could investigate things that seem off center, or like not the conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
And I would have to credit that, and that's kind of like what I'm saying.
Very good. Okay. And in terms of other teachings that have impacted.
No, then let me tell you this one, because this is really cool. I don't know. Okay, well, I was kind of slow with girls when I was young, you know, and just to say, you know, and so that I had a few times when I had some major breakthroughs. But when I was in my mid-30s, I was going back to university because we decided, I was in an organization that was doing building and engineering and property management and investment in real estate. And we decided we needed another real estate broker. And so then I was already an engineer, electrical engineer, so I had a Bachelor of Science. So I went to you know, from that I could take graduate level courses, and I took graduate level business courses in real estate investment, real estate law. I think there was 4, I don't remember, accounting probably, somehow investment analysis. Somehow there was like 400 or 500 courses that I was taking. And then with that I could go into the board of real estate and say, look, I'm qualified now to be a broker. And so I had 12 credit hours, which made me a full-time student. But the full-time student was actually 16 hours. You know, you could have 16 hours for the same payment. So I had 4 extra hours for free if I wanted them.
Okay.
So I took Tai Chi, you know, these 1-hour courses.
Okay.
Ballroom dancing, swimming,
Yeah.
and modern dance.
Wow. Okay.
And so this modern dance, you know, the University of Utah, this is where you use your body in all different ways, right?
Yeah.
And then they do a lot of flexing, and so it's kind of like hard work, right? So then I had this little wisp of a teacher. She was like Peter Pan, right? And she was in her 23 or 24, and I was 35, right? I felt totally in love with her, right? And so I was coming like an hour early to class, and it was a laboratory class. So for 1 hour credit hour, I still had a lot of hours in there. And I was warming up and running up and down the dance floor. And, you know, I was the only one in there, and I was kind of like breathing a lot. And I was kind of trying to get more flexible as a 35-year-old. I didn't really ever catch her or nothing like that. But I mean, you know, we became friends. But because of this kind of like attraction, I started to move my body a whole lot. And, you know, honestly, I think that really broke me free.
Okay.
You know,
a breakthrough in your relationship to yourself and life.
Yeah, because you know, like our body mirrors our consciousness, right? Or like the way we hold our mind. And so then, instead of working on my mind, I was working on my body, which allowed me. And I was working pretty hard at it because of this biological attraction to a young woman. And you know, if I really look at it. And then I actually did a summer workshop with her, or with the modern dance, and I totally got into modern dance. And I think I did it another year too, and so I was really into that. And before I never even wouldn't dance, or I just trip over my feet, or I don't know. I mean, I was pretty stiff in the mind, in the body, and very stiff in thinking I was inadequate, and I was very stiff in thinking I was slow. And I had two surgeries when I was 7 and when I was 11. So my whole childhood was more or less believing I was fragile. Never did sports, never really moved, and I bet you anything that probably was my original awakening.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
It's beautiful.
And not with any kind of trying it or nothing like that, not with any kind of a goal or intention or anything like that. It snuck up on me, It totally did it itself,
Just in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Isn't that amazing?
Thank you. So have you, do you know where this teacher is now?
Gee, I wonder. I can remember her name, Mary Sprafka. Mary, if you're out there, call me. She should be like, I bet you she's probably 59 or 60.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a trip?
Okay. Wow, beautiful. Thank you. It's a beautiful awakening. Yeah, you're right. I think the body holds the pattern of our mind or our ego consciousness. And you're exactly right. And so, I mean, that's, I think, why yoga is, such a potent practice. We're freeing up all of the tensions in the body.
Exactly. I was doing yoga without even knowing it.
Yeah. And Tai Chi and the Sufi twirling and all these things that free us up, And now the journey of awakening is continuing in a big way because you, speaking of being free of patterns, you have uprooted yourself from America and jumped on a plane and landed in Australia and you are a complete gypsy. You're a wandering Sufi mystic now.
Yeah, I'm a video nomad, right?
Video nomad, yeah. I mean, you kind of landing on doorsteps, yeah. And you're discovering people in the nooks and crannies of Australia. So, yeah. How's the tour going?
I don't know, you guys. You remember Margot Riddler? You know, I'm thinking of her all the time because she's got that story where she's, you know, she had a kind of a breakdown, which means like, what should I say? Her story of her kind of collapsed. Mm-hmm. And so then she was saying like she went 4 years in Central America with a rucksack, just kind of like going from doorstep to doorstep or whatever. I feel the same way. I got a bigger rucksack, but anyhow, I wanted to call her and tell her about that, you know, but yeah, it's kind of like that. I mean, of course I have you said I left America and I uprooted myself and all that. I don't really have that story, but I mean, I also have that story too. You know, but I mean, I have no visa or nothing like that. I have no way to stay in Australia, and I'm not creating a story around it because that's what day by day means, not having a story. So there's not really end point or arrival or place to go.
Do you feel an impact though in your being and your?
Hell, are you kidding? Like every day's New Year's, like it's a whole rebirth every day. I have no idea what's going to happen, what's going to blow in my way. It's total. Yeah. The first day I got to Australia, I hit the ground running. I didn't have a lick of jet lag after 20-hour flight or whatever. I mean, I was just going full. I was going before I got to Australia. I had such an energy. I was doing all kinds of video talks and trying to get Australians and. Yeah. Then I went into all those 3-way talks. I did 8 of them, and I was just pounding them out there back in November and October. Yeah, and I was already in Australia, you know, energetically.
Yeah. So that's beautiful. Well, it's wonderful to have you here. Let me ask: you have interviewed such a huge range of people. Has there been someone or a teaching, someone that you've met as part of Never Not Here that has really shifted your perspective or deepened your understanding or helped to open up a deeper inquiry in you?
Some of them have been kind of radical, right? Mm. And, you know, for a long time I would say, well, I'm not here as a judge and jury. I don't do any selection. People would ask me, you know, who's enlightened, who isn't, or anything. Any kind of questions like almost that same question that you asked. Mm-hmm. You know, I kind of would say, well, that's not what I'm up to. Just trying to make a judgment about that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And then a lot of people I've fallen in love with. And then some people are, you know, there's like some people are hard to interview actually for various reasons. Yeah. Some are hard to tame, you know. They rattle on and on and on. Yeah. Some are, some don't have anything, you know, you have to really prime the pump again and again and again and really nothing. They give you this silence answer, you know, like, you know, what is there anyhow? Almost, you know, some are really rough like that. Like they make you keep starting over, start over again, start over. Finally, they take pity on you and they actually say something. You know? And one that was really cool was Shankar, you know, Vijay Shankar, because he started talking. But he's really kind of like, he's a tough one, you know, and he's got his quirks where people kind of have a take on him, a pretty strong take on him. Mm-hmm. Paul Lowe is great, who is in here in Australia. Mm-hmm. I really fell in love with Jack O'Keefe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bentinho Massaro, I love the young ones. Yeah. Matt Kahn is only in his 30s. Of course, everybody is loving Jeff Foster. Mm. A lot of, you know, there's so many. I like Locke Kelly. I like, you know, the guy in You know, I'm going to probably make a lot of mistakes because these names will come a little slow, and then people will say, hey, you interviewed that guy 3 times, he doesn't even know his name, so I better shut up.
But it had an impact on you.
Rupert Spira, you know, it's really...
Francis Lucille's really friend, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You know, but I'm not that close to so many, you know, how many? And a lot of people, you know, okay, let's just give some generic comments. I mean, these guys are businesses. I mean, you can't even call them. And they're all busy, and they're really proud of their busyness. They're proud of their busyness, you know. So then they're really into agendas and all that stuff. And I mean, I think a lot of them are. Everybody's, you know, in the Western world, we're so proud of just being unavailable, right?
It means that you're special.
Huh?
And we want to be special above all. Yeah. Well, the mind
I try to answer the phone, try to answer my emails, try to be around for people. And if they call, I let that be the first priority.
Yeah. But it's had what kind of an impact has it had? How long have you been doing, firstly, Never Not Here? How long has that been running?
5 years.
5 years. And so what is the impact on you as a person? And, having been exposed to so many, you know, just, I mean, on one level, it's just so many interesting people, but on another level, it's so many very fine teachers. I mean, it's been being exposed to higher principles and higher ideals in a really deeply considered conversation that you're living this conversation, this inquiry. It's quite beautiful. So what's the impact been on you?
I think in a way the impact is the same on me as it is on everyone else, that there's too many, right? And then in the end, you have to be thrown back onto yourself. And that's the coolest part of it, really, because then, I don't know, like if I say what all these people say, I still object to it, you know? I somehow believe myself more than them, right? No matter who they are, right?
Lovely.
Yeah.
So you're not just, you're not buying the line, which I don't think any of these, and I don't think any authentic teacher expects someone to buy the line. Like if a teacher says everything is consciousness, I tend to think the last thing they want someone to do is just take that and say, okay, well, everything's consciousness. I think we're meant to consider that and ponder that and look at that and mull over it and reflect on it. And if we disagree with it, then you disagree with it. We investigate. So is that what you're saying? It throws you back onto who you are and you see yourself reflected? Or you see who Richard Miller is in contrast to having so many diverse points of view?
Well, I just came across some pretty interesting terminology with Shankarananda. And he calls those G statements or great statements, and they come from the scriptures and so on. And everything is consciousness, or there are no boundaries, or there's a whole, maybe I can come up with a whole bunch of them if I needed to, but...
The Maha affirmations.
Yeah, in a way. And first of all, I used to just say, well, why even say that? You know, it's meaningless to those you're talking to, and those that it's meaningful for don't need to listen.
Yeah.
So then I say that shouldn't be part of the teaching, but that should be a discovery. The teaching should be a tricky path that takes you to discover that, but not, you shouldn't say it because, okay, you know, thousands of people literally are hearing that and they're just repeating it. I mean, this is, okay.
Yeah.
One thing I learned is Never Not Here is I learned how to parrot.
Yeah.
I'm a really good parrot and I can really listen to another parrot, you know. Yeah. And so then G statements are just parroting for 99.9% of the people.
They can be, yeah.
Well, for 0.01%, they aren't. You know, whatever those percentages are.
I heard a teacher, an Advaita teacher, say it was like watching a brain surgeon with a scalpel. And then the student, when his friend comes to visit and the friend has an issue, says, ha ha ha, I was with, you know, such and such a satsang teacher the other day, and he took to a guy with his scalpel, just, and the effect, the result, the outcome is going to be very different. The pointer delivered by a genuine sage, if there is such a thing, which I believe there's a lot of very genuine, profoundly awakened teachers that we are blessed with. That pointer delivered by a sage, it's like the surgeon with the scalpel, but perhaps, you or I might do some damage. Okay. While you have been in Australia, I understand that you have been blessed with an unexpected romance, and you mentioned to me you'll be happy to share about this, and I think it's very interesting within the context that we're speaking about, if you're open to sharing about that.
Well, what's a romance, I mean, okay, I met Sam Noel Pierce on the internet. Mm-hmm. And we're not the opposite sex, so there's not any biology working with us. We're not really attracted in that way, in a biological way. But I would say that we had a romance, Mm. And maybe I loved him more than any other man. And he's not that easy. Not at all. That's not it. Mm-hmm. And somehow he just opened and shared himself with me, and I shared myself with him. Mm. And so then another person that shared themselves with me was actually a female. So then that could be more biological in nature for mm-hmm. me. Mm-hmm. And who knows? I mean, I'm not making any proclamations. Mm-hmm. But basically, it was an immense discovery mm-hmm. that somehow the chemistry of us two, and we'll see how it works because she's coming tomorrow. Mm. And we'll see if it's still active or if it might be even 10 times more potent. Mm-hmm. But somehow, let me just go backwards a little bit and say a few preface remarks. That when we meet, so often we have expectations when anyone meets. Two people meet. Mm-hmm. And we don't really want to fulfill anyone else's expectations. Or we'll double check it to see if we do for now, but we don't really want to tie into a series of expectations, or we're not looking to sign a contract. We're just looking to spend some time with people we meet. Mm. And so those expectations create a barrier. And so then that barrier creates a discomfort when you get close. Close is just like, beholding each other, for instance, like mm-hmm. we're doing now. Mm-hmm. And so then there's a tendency to kind of peel away, right? So then I would look away, and then, like when we're with a person, we pin them for so long, and then we say, okay, I'll relax on that person, and I'll look over here, right? Mm. And then we can look at that even with our wife or anyone, Is it just plain comfortable to be with somebody, or is it kind of like we kind of avert our gaze and kind of look, and then somebody's looking at us and we're thinking, I wonder what they want. And then someone else might say, oh, is this a staring contest? They'd be game for it, maybe. Do you kind of relate to what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a childhood, the first spiritual insight, I guess, of my life, or spiritual experience. It happened right near this house, up near the church on the hill. I was under 10 years old. I was very young. I was walking to school, and I was on the hill, and I turned and looked out over the whole of the town of Wallsend here. And I can't explain how it happened, but suddenly, and it does relate to what you're saying, suddenly my entire felt sense of life swept over the whole of the town. It was as if I held the whole town in my heart and all of the people. It was very sudden and to my core of my soul. And I suddenly felt that I could see the society was living backwards. And this all happened all at once. It was almost like a precognitive insight. And I became directly aware that we are recoiling from love. We recoil. Who we are in the conventional sense, who we normally take ourselves to be, is the recoil from the embrace with another. And that contraction of that recoil, we say, that is I. And I'll protect that. And then, therefore, to be with another and to embrace another it implies the death of the very I that we protect. So the birth of love, or the discovery of love, requires the death of the I, but we're protecting. So we're caught in such a juxtaposition. It's such a conundrum. I was only about, I'm sure I was less than 10, 11 years old. And it suddenly struck me too. Instantly, I looked up to the church, the Catholic Church on the hill, and I realized, Jesus lived this. His entire life is this message that if we die to ourselves, we will be born to a greater love. And that everything in his life was a demonstration of that. And I went to school and, played on the monkey bars and forgot all about it. But it was a profound seed. It's a really deep living memory. And it's exactly what you just expressed. And I think it's what's happening in all these satsangs, is these great teachers who have died to themselves are vehicles of this great love. And they're just this great, this great invitation. As one teacher I really respect, Jeannie Zandi, she talks about welcoming whatever happens. And to me, she's really embodies that embrace. Yeah, so I can relate.
Okay, let me ask you a question, and then I'll go on with my story. But so you said that somehow embracing this totality somehow implies a death of the single or the separate. But at 10, did you really think of that, or is that an overlay that you put on lately because so many people say that?
No, at 10, it came to me that what I took to be myself was a recoil. And that implicitly, I can't have this. And I knew that I saw it, that we identify with this, and that we can't have this and this at once. You'll only get to this, which is the embrace and the totality, by releasing and letting go of, and implicitly, in a sense, dying. It did occur like that.
But did you have that preference? Did you say, okay, well, I would like this, but I'm just have to have the preference of this? Or it was just because society was like rolling that way, and seemed like there was no way out, or you would be totally alone because nobody else would go for the embrace, and they wouldn't understand you, or what?
The tremendous challenge of the embrace lay before me in that moment, and I saw that as humanity's challenge. And I saw that everything in our society that is so completely insane, from military power to psychopathic companies that are just destroying the planet, all of those things they arise out of this, and that we don't know what a culture or a society based on this would be. And I saw the tremendous challenge of it. I mean, it's still an ongoing process for me. There's plenty of places in me where I still recoil, where I still do this. And I even having this insight, and even not just theoretically, but having a deep felt sense of it, still there's, if that part of us that is recoiling and hanging on, if that part doesn't want to let go, it doesn't want to let go. We can't force it to let go or coax it to let go. So, and there's still, I've been graced too since then to know that embrace, I've been graced by, the tremendous gift of grace, of seeing one's deeper connection to life, or one's deeper nature. But there's still plenty of recoil. I think that seeing one's true nature really only highlights all of the places that are left in us where we are recoiling. And I don't even think the end goal is to be in a state of permanent openness. I think there's perhaps somewhat of a dance that happens between form and formlessness, and I'm still learning that. I don't. It's. I certainly haven't mastered it. I'm a student.
Yeah. What you're saying sounds like total wisdom, that it is a dance and that both are included, because they are. It's just obvious. They're both here. But maybe I would like to say more about that, because I think we give too much power to the ego and in the egosphere and all that stuff. But let me just continue my story, because otherwise I'm waltzing away from these romantic visions, right?
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
So anyhow, I was explaining about barriers and preconceptions, like in preconception meaning like I have an idea how I want it to be between you and me. And then I was explaining about how much you can stay in contact before you get in trouble, and that we could call that in the ego that doesn't want to give itself up, and the fear of melting and all that. But in the meantime, it's also kind of a fear like somebody wants something from me. And I'm not going to be able to fulfill it, or I don't want to fulfill it, either one, inadequacy or somehow another agenda or a lot of different things, So then I said, well, then we were just gazing on each other, and then we avert our gaze and we look over here, and then we're gazing on each other. But there's other things too, because you could be just, together and kind of, receiving each other, let's say. And then an idea comes up too, and then you want to explain something, or you want to speak something, or then each one of these speaks or explanations is an abstraction that takes you away from just this, it's designed in a way to take you out, right? And to break the contact. It's a deflection, right? And it could even be worse. It could be like, I'm going to go to the fridge, or it could be your schedule, which you keep real busy, so you don't have to make any of these contacts. Now I got to go here, now I got to go there. And so then I'm just trying to acknowledge what the mechanism is, and that all these great things that says, oh, and you want a tea? It's really not such a great thing, it's just because I've reached the limit. I can't just behold you anymore.
Did you say, and you want a tea?
Yeah, and so I'm going to go get you a tea. That's going to give me a break, right? It's not really hospitality. I'm saying maybe it's just the opposite. It's just like in my wit's end.
Yeah. The whole culture is that wit's end and the deflection. Yeah.
So the moment Rena and I got together,
yes,
we looked at each other. There was absolutely no barrier. There was no reason to leave. We had no reason to say anything. In other words, you could say like we fell into each other's eyes, plonked down into this black hole. I don't know why or how, it's like a super grace. I never knew her. She just found me somehow. I got in her car, stuck my suitcases in my equipment in her trunk, and then we were just poof, like we were in Neverland, And then we could do our thing and talk and stuff, and then we'd get together and sit on the veranda and just look at each other. And like, there was no reason to look away. There was no reason to get a tea. There was nothing to go from. There was no expectation. There was just a nothing there. I mean, as if she was a guru, as if she was a Master Charles or whoever, it would be that you would fall into, right? A Nityananda, right? But she was just Rena, and I was just Richard. But somehow together, I mean, and I don't have to say that's a tantric or that's a love, a special love or anything like that. I don't have to say anything, but it was just a miracle, right? So we didn't know what to make of it. So then after 4 or 5, 6 days, her daughter came back, and I had moved out of her daughter's bedroom, and so what to do? So I got in bed with her. See? And even that, there was no Richard and no Rena. There was a biology doing a thing. And it was a thing that I'd never done. I don't know what was happening. And I just surrendered to that. And then, I mean, feelings came. But just, you know, even thinking about it, or just, you know, when we were watching each other, there just these feelings came, this opening, this. But there was really no fear or retraction or recoil from it, because really there was no, because, okay, and then I'll say why in a second, but, you know, then it came, I'll say how it happened, that why. So then we thought, oh, all these feelings, we should say something. God, whenever that feeling happens, I always say, like, I love you, or something like that, you know. And it wasn't right to say, because there was no I and there was no you.
The Tao that can be told is not the true Tao. So sometimes it can even be the mind's conditioning that causes the potential for to say something or to label something. It might not even be a recoil from a so-called, you know, the ego in us. It can be just rote conditioning too.
No, I think the conditioning is the ego. It is the ego. And so then when pressure builds, you know, steam is up, and then something. So then it was like this, you know, like we'd just be sitting there, and then in me it started happening. I asked her, she said yes, but like things would come up to say, you know, ideas would think and say, and then I thought, I don't have to break anything. And they would just go. And then they would come up. They would go. And then, like, maybe I'd say, wow, things come up, and I don't even need to say them. I don't need to do anything with it. I don't need it. These forms or structures can be here, and then they don't have to be here either. They can come and go. And I really started seeing things come and go, like they say, right? Thoughts come and go, feelings come and go. Because I wasn't getting on every train. I wasn't taking in every, you know, one around the block and trying it out and attaching that one to the next one and to the next one. And then I started to realize there's all these images. You know, here we are somehow in sync. Wouldn't this be a life? And you could say travel, live together, be an Australian, all these things. How would I do it? And all these things start to come out. And then the whole thing was like, well, that's exactly what we're not doing. And that's why this is here. So then I would just leave these images up there. And she confirmed the same thing for her. That we didn't create any stories. We didn't have to make anything out of these images.
So you saw the billboard to the movie theater, but you didn't buy a ticket.
Yeah. I didn't have to buy any tickets, right? And then we just kind of had been running like that. And then both of our lives kind of broke loose after that. And we left. We only were together 16 days.
Oh, wow.
And then we left, and both of our lives have broke loose. We haven't talked every day. Sometimes we only text. Sometimes we're getting on this Monday morning Skype conference call from the Eckhart Tolle forum, which, you know, 15 or 20 people are on, and then we listen or talk or type a few things in there, but we don't necessarily talk to each other, but we talk too, we Skype each other, and it's kind of the same on Skype, that we just look at each other and poof, that's our place, you know.
It's beautiful. And where it's leading, nobody knows. You're just flowing in the adventure of your life.
Well, I said that, you know, well, in a way what I learned was that images could be there and you don't have to make something out of them, right? You don't have to make a story out of everything that pops up. And then one story is going to be made, right? So, because we're doing something right now. So that's a story, and that was made, you know, and maybe it's very, very subtle and very, you know, innocuous. But, so then it's not an aversion or a rejection of story, but it's kind of like not, it's just kind of a selection or like a slowing down.
And we can, I mean, what it's your, I want to ask you about creativity. You know, we have the mind with its stories and its concepts, and well, that's one aspect of our being that can move us to action. But we also have the heart and deep feeling, and we also have the dimension of being, which is replete with energy, with the creative power. What's your thoughts on? What's your feeling on about creativity, the capacity to create?
You said thoughts, feeling, and being. Thoughts, heart, and being.
Mm.
And so then what I found was, like when I said, I'll repeat that the images were all here, and I realized I didn't have to make anything out of any image.
Mm.
So that point is pure potential, because I can make something out of any one of those images.
Yeah, from the space, the empty space, or the pure presence.
Yeah, well, it's empty, but it's not empty. There's images there and stuff, thoughts come and go and all that, but they don't get boarded. If there are trains, you say you don't board them.
Yeah.
So then they're there, but in a sense, it's not empty, because they come. There's always a rising and falling.
Okay.
But you're not really attached. You're not really attaching to any of them. Like you're not making anything out of them, and you can make something out of any one. See, so then that's like a real choice point. Like you can really affect your life in a great way.
Mm.
And you don't have to feel like you're tied into a whole chain of events because of all your circumstances, which we usually do. And somehow we find ourselves already in the activity. And we say, how did I get here anyhow? Oh my God. And everything is connected to everything else when you talk about jobs and mortgages and wives and children and schools and older parents and sickness and caring and broken cars and roofs to fix, and all these things are happening at once, right? And they all seem to be attached. And you can't really just break away so easy from any one thing, because they're all, somehow it's a giant web, right? But there is, if you find that point, that's where we usually find ourselves, right? Or for so many, in our memory, that's how we used to be. We think, okay, so then this is the point when it's a pure potential point, that lots of images, I could grasp for this one, I could grasp for this one, do this, about a certain, maybe it's only about a certain circumstance, because I still have some appointments. I know I've got a visa that's running out. I know I have to get out of the country. I know there's certain things in there that's already a constellation of things, right, that are more or less preformed. And so then when you say creativity, see, and then, well, that's potential is creativity. You can create around any one of those. And then how would you do it? You say the heart, see. And so then you can feel each one of those, and then you can do what they say, follow the Shakti. See, because you could feel, okay, I'm going to have to do something. So then I'll just feel one, and I'll feel them all. And I just feel, some of them really just feel like, this is going to really add to my life in the greatest way. And so those are the ones you're going to follow, right? And that's what and so, because we never know, well, what does it mean to follow the Shakti, follow the energy, right? Just do your desire. Are those just desires or what? But you're saying follow the heart, so the heart is a feeling, right? And so each one of these thoughts and projections has a feeling that goes with it. And then the part about being, saying the being is full of energy. And well, we're always being, and we have energy and we don't have energy. So then I'm not so sure there's going to be a place where being's going to come in and give us more energy. It's just kind of like the Shakti part, or the energy is in delight, and it's less in foreboding, right? And so then if you're doing a lot of foreboding things, you don't have much energy, and if you're doing things that are meaningless and that you kind of hate, you might even be depressed, and you might even be without any energy. You might go all the way down to a coma or something, or try to commit suicide or something like that. And so I don't know if there's a separate place called being, which it's going to give you more creativity than not. And so I'm equating creativity in a way with a pause. The pause of not just jumping on everything, every good idea that pops in your mind, go for it. Every good thought that comes in your head, say it, right? I mean, you get a lot of trouble that way, right?
I've gotten into trouble that way, actually. But see, it's interesting. I think we have the same grasp of the same thing, where it's just language is different. So I'm interested that you've said if you're self-aware and you have some capacity to self-reflect in the moment, you can self-reflect on the play of thoughts and inspect which of those thoughts carry a feeling, and you can feel into that feeling, and that can be connected to a feeling of Shakti or energy, and you can see which combinations of thought feeling evoke a deeper flow of energy or Shakti, and that's like a process of self-inquiry that is connected inherently to creativity. So it's a beautiful way to bridge our spiritual life and our day-to-day life. Yeah, very powerful. And that would mirror very closely my understanding of creativity too.
Another way to look at creativity is, anyone can be creative. All you need is imagination. You can create castles, but you can't necessarily manifest them. So when we talk about creativity, we're talking about both. We're talking about having a brilliant idea and then also going through all the problems of trying to make that happen in your life.
Make it happen, yeah.
Yeah.
Like getting the certification to be able to run Never Not Here. You must have had an inspiration, and then you had to do some perspiration, dedication to make something happen. It's like I've written a book. It was one thing to have the idea to write that book. It was an entirely different kettle of fish to bring it through 7 years and get it into print. It wasn't easy. It was blood, sweat, and tears. So,
yeah, well, like I shared, I'll repeat that part, that I really had no inspiration whatsoever. And whatever that inspiration was, it was kind of like mindless and below the surface. It said I ought to get this certificate. And really wasn't any learning. I did all the learning myself and afterwards. And, it wasn't really, they just gave me the legal possibility to go into their studio. And then they gave me a slot where that was a kind of like a impetus for me to create some episodes. And so then those two things were the excuse that it took just to start doing this.
And it's all come together, and here we are. So what's next for you on your Australian tour? New Zealand, is that right?
Well, in a way I'm on a roll, right? Because what could be better than actually finally taking a step and leaving your old structures? And first I just left them physically. But then my wife and we even said, well, why don't we say we're separate? And maybe we said that because that's just a fair thing, because like I'm experiencing certain freedoms and I want her to have them too. She kind of had the idea. And then we're not really trying to cut the ties and divide our goods and all that stuff. But we're just saying we're separate now. I don't know, maybe that's a thing that you can do in Italy more than you can do in the West, because sometimes in Italy people they live their own lives and then they don't really always follow with a legal structure behind it. In fact, the legal structure is kind of like what caused the trouble. Because when we're involved in a marriage contract, then we're kind of wiggling around trying to say, well, how much room is there in this contract? What's the space where I can be me? And what's the space where I'm not offending her or something like that? Whatever that offense might be, maybe I'm doing confusing things to her and she's wondering why I'm doing it, running around. I really never went out and saw any women until this time, 16 years. But I wasn't even seeing a woman. She was just hosting me I wasn't doing anything, but...
it just happened.
But I did. So then I don't even know if that's the cause of it, because really we weren't getting on that well. We had a pretty flat relationship, right? And then this was probably... Okay, so then if we're out of the contract, we don't have to really wiggle around, and feel like, where's the space for me? Me, what about me? How am I going to be together with them? And we can just be friends from outside of a contract. And so then real love can happen.
Yeah.
and deep love can happen, which
free.
already was happening anyhow, deep love and real love, but it was kind of like it didn't have the form of it because it looked like control, dramas, and squabbling, right?
You're free. When we're free from a relationship, it strikes me listening to you, and it's beautiful to hear that we're not only, if we move on from a relationship, we're not only free from each other, from the structure, but if we truly let go, we're then free to be in a new connection and a new communion. So it sounds like that space is flowering.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I would like to have her have a new connection too, but I don't know if she wants one. But, I just concentrate on me. I mean, I'm just taking one if it happens. Okay, so then I said I'm on a roll here. It just means like I'm seeing so many people, going to so many cities and falling into so many groups and learning so many new teachings and having so much love and finding I can love and finding people loving me and being able to accept it, which is really not all that easy. That's probably it. If you can accept people's acceptance of you, and so then I would say like, oh, I ought to keep this going, right? Why stop it? But in a way, then that's a preconception, right? So my visa's up. I'm thinking to go to New Zealand. I don't have really very many or no contacts that I've developed there. So then I'm thinking like, why don't I just cut it completely? I'm not going to really cut it with anybody or but I mean, not have in my mind that I'm going to continue on this great saga. It will happen anyhow. But anyhow, I don't see any reason to make some plans. And without contacts in New Zealand, I just ought to go there for 3 months. And maybe if I don't meet anyone, I won't meet anyone. I'll just go for walks or something. I don't know. I don't really need to make it up, That sounds like a more complete adventure than just. But I'm sure people will come into my life, and other amazing things will happen.
So, how do you feel about what we've covered? I've done a few interviews in my life. This just came unexpectedly.
Well, I think for me, I'm sharing what I discovered and think is valuable, and that's kind of like a way to see the point where you're in peace, and then you transfer to some kind of activity and action, and to see that transition seems to be such a power point, because that's when you're seeing that more and more often, then you can say, well, yeah, that's good. I want to go on that, or I don't know. I think I'll just wait on that. And then that's like where the point of power is, right? Because otherwise you just found yourself swept up, always in the current. And you might start wondering, well, how did I get here? But if somehow you blink at that critical moment, it seems like there is no choice.
You want to have a hand on the rudder and not just be allowing the wind to hit the sails, and they have no choice.
Right.
Yeah. So
just also a hand on the doorknob, just to let things come in or not, and not just let the whole world flood in on you.
Or step out the way of the light, as well. Get out of the way. Alan Watts's autobiography is called "In My Own Way," which has got a double meaning to it. Yeah. So that's a pretty major insight. What other major themes have arisen as insights, or what have been the big penny dropping moments within your own quest as you explore so many rich spiritual traditions and different spiritual teachers?
Well, one of the first things maybe that happened was I started to realize when I hear a lot of distinctions.
Mm-hmm.
When I hear methods and systems that seem complex, I'm not really attracted to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because that seems like a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And that mostly is springing from an abstract construction. I don't see where it is right here and now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of like saying, like, I'm knowing the address of me has got to be here and now. And I'm knowing the address of love and connection and wholeness has got to be here and now. And if I'm asked to go into certain abstract constructions and kind of do some workarounds, hopefully to somehow end up here and now, it doesn't seem like I'm attracted to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I speak to people, I try to simplify it and say, well, is there a shorter way to get in? And, they say, well, this works. But I mean, that's okay. You asked me where I got this Rudraksha, and then the certain guru was a yogi, Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev from Coimbatore.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved being with him, but somehow I thought that was kind of like a workaround,
Mm-hmm.
To do yoga and build your capacity of your body to hold more energy and stuff. I mean, for what? Why? I mean, here I am. When I kind of really fully got that, then I left that. Started to investigate non-duality and then investigate those things that are here and now, And I'm not opposed to kind of dividing life linguistically, because I think most, if not all, of our hang-ups are linguistic. They're abstract constructions. They're not really here. People say things like cellular memory, but I don't think the cells remember. They just reflect. They're reflecting what we're broadcasting to them in our ideas and belief structures. And the moment we let go of that, they let go too. I mean, I'm not saying 100% because I know there's things like Rolfing or whatnot, like tissue, deep tissue, fascia, and all these things that take a form, and then they're not instantly going to change. But also you hear people with big tumors that are gone in a couple of days.
Yeah.
So then even things that seem fixed in the material world are also malleable. And then that's kind of like my, I just want to know how malleable, and what will, I know you can take a lot of vitamins. We were talking about some gurus that take 1 million vitamins and all that stuff, but, why don't they have vitamins for their attitude? They've got a belief structure that the body needs these chemicals, right? So maybe it does. Or so many times the body creates chemicals. It is a chemical factory. And it creates certain vitamins and all that.
Yeah, there are yogis that don't eat, and
breatharians, right?
Well, yeah, and some of them are genuine. They say that the just within our system, when we're in deep communion with the divine, that there are capacities within the body mind that allow it to sustain itself. I've studied some of these yogis, and the scientists were baffled, and they couldn't explain it. And the guy, didn't eat for the 20 days or so that they had him in an isolation, under constant surveillance, checking all these vitals, and he took no liquids, and he claimed that he was receiving some kind of a soma fluid that was dripping down onto his tongue every now and then, and that would fill him with vitality. The scientists couldn't debunk him.
So, there are these guys, and they die. And we die too. Yeah. With our pills or without them. Yeah. And dying is an important process, right? And who knows if sickness is not an important process?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I've met some teachers that are really kind of very fragile. And that subtlety gives them very, very deep insights. Yeah. And if you look at it that way, and you can realize that we have a will to live in a way that we're used to. So then it's my will, not thy will, be done.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's just more of that on a some more subtle layer.
Mm.
And when we kind of give that up, maybe we die too. But, you know, maybe we don't. Maybe all our ailments go. But I don't believe in hocus pocus that says if you get all your attitudes right, then you live a beautiful life.
Yeah. Well, if we take the example of Jesus, you know, who was living a profoundly beautiful life, full of faith and full of certainty that, you know, he was of the kingdom of heaven. He was the, you know, progeny of the Almighty, and, you know, it wasn't his belief system and his bad attitude that manifested all the negativity around him. It was, you know, it was a culture that saw that it was being threatened. It was the collective ego being threatened, that pounced on what it perceived as a threat. So I would never say that you know, he must have been lacking in his affirmations on abundance or safety.
Yeah, well, Jesus was a put-up job, though, because I remember in one scripture where he was in a temple and everyone was chasing him or upset with him, and he made himself invisible, is all they said, right?
Right.
And then he was gone. And then he wouldn't have had to stay in that society. He could have had a small group, and he could have taught people outside of it, and he could have, you know, migrated somewhere, and he could have lived. But and that's what I meant by a put-up job. You know, in a way, he was a. You know, what was he doing? He was challenging this society, you know, and naturally something was going to come of it. I mean, he didn't have to just be so blatant in his challenges. He could have just done a lot of good. Of course, you know, I don't know what. It might have been great, you know, because I don't know, was Buddha wasn't crucified, but I mean, other great spiritual leaders ended up you know, they didn't found a church or anything like that, but, you know, structures have been built around other leaders that weren't crucified or weren't, you know, and then a lot of other ones were too. You know, I think there was, you know, I don't know who, some Sufi masters were drawn and quartered, and a lot of people were killed and tortured.
Yeah, many people have died for the truth.
Yeah.
Or for standing for what they felt the truth was anyway. And
yeah, but I think they could have all escaped, even Socrates and others. They could have just backed off and just said, okay, well, I can still talk, but I don't have to talk right on the public square.
Do you think there's a value in that? Do you think that there's a value in, I mean, there must be a reason they're doing it. They're challenging the culture, and they're demonstrating the difference between two distinct ways of thinking and ways of living. One's based on faith in the truth, or trust in the truth and in what is, and the other is based on, I guess, ultimately on fear and control. And so there are teachers that choose to risk life and limb to demonstrate that, and then they die for it. Do you think there's a reason they do it, or do you think it just happens that way?
Well, you know, I would say that they wouldn't have to, you know, and they could still do a lot of good, right?
Yeah.
And I would say, like, you know, who am I to comment on that, you know, because I don't know what's needed, and they thought it was, so they did it. So then I have to honor that too.
Well, life thought it was too, you know, because ultimately there's something bigger than all of us. You know, I think it's happened for everybody, where you said, you know, it just happened. There was a whole range of circumstances that brought you into what you're doing, and it wasn't your mind. You had no inspiration. It wasn't based on Richard Miller's motivation, and so maybe for these great beings, like and formidable characters in the history of people who stand for the truth, maybe if they could have chosen a different way, they would have. Probably they would have.
Oh, that's very well said. Right. It just was some kind of imperative that who knows where it came from. But just to say that, you know, it happened, so it must be right. Well, okay, all the slaughters just happened too. You know, all the genocides just happened, and all the colonial powers took over the original peoples. It just happened. And so then it didn't just happen necessarily for the better, or whether someone should have interceded with some kind of like ease, some way to soften the situation, or not. Who can say? I mean, it is it's just a past thing. There's no comment really on the past. But how would you do it now? Let's say somebody wanted to get crucified. I mean, okay, there's this woman in India, in Tiruvannamalai, that was actually kind of like a enlightened leader or something, spiritual leader, Radha Ma. She burned herself.
Yeah.
She did a gasoline trip. So then, should she do that? It just happened, right? But if I was there, I would have taken her gasoline away, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a tragedy. That's when I saw about that happened, it really perplexed me. I mean, and we can only in that circumstance extrapolate. There's lots of stories and theories what was happening, but I guess we don't know what was happening ultimately within her mind and her life, why she made a choice like that, or if she made that choice. And all these things that just happen, we have all these tragedies happening in the world, genocides, and it's a mad world. It's a mad world with glimmers of beauty and sprinkles of truth and profundity. But overall, our culture and our society, on the whole, is I mean, clearly we still have a lot to learn. I think clearly we're still predominantly living from this contraction. So that's what, I mean, I've got friends who are activists, and they attend a lot of protests, and they have a lot of strong political beliefs, and they feel that a change needs to happen at that level. And I'm interested to learn about that kind of thing. It's not native to my thinking. But to me, the root of all of this discordant activity and disharmonious way of living in the world comes from this contraction, because it comes with the assumption that we're separate and that there's not enough to go around in the world. It's only when we get to the openness that there can be this true abundance. It's very popular to affirm abundance, and I think the abundance that can be affirmed is of another dimension, of the infinite, when we can commune like yourself and Rena were sharing in the abundance of presence. So I think you're right that if we try to address things at the level of a story or an explanation, ultimately it's meaningless. That we have to address the root. That's how I see it. We have to address the root issue within ourselves.
Well, that's a lot of things you just said there, and I got a pretty strong opinion about a lot of them. We can be here a few hours there. I think a lot of you expressed that the perplexity of how the world is pretty weird, right? And so many weird things happen, and somehow the space is in the world for those things to happen. The space is there, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The space is there for that to happen, which is the space of the contraction.
Yeah. Or, it's not only a space of contraction, it's also a space of separation.
Same thing.
See, because when we're separate, then anything can happen that's separate from us, and we don't feel involved, right? So we're not an activist.
Exactly.
We're not politically motivated. We don't have any strong views. And because, that is a proof to me that the spiritual community is still separate. And so then what we do is we just repair to our own monastery cell, our meditation cushion. And we say, okay, we make up a hocus pocus idea that when we open our contraction, the whole world's contraction will open. And then we disinvolve ourselves and disengage and close off to what's happening, right? And we're not activists in any way. And I'm not saying that activists should look like the present day activists is not what it should look like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it should look like. But I mean, what we're doing is we're taking our attention from, well, the news and television and the newspaper, and we're moving it over to something else called the space, which means we're ignoring that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, we're creating a big empty space where mischief can take over.
Yeah,
and we're doing that, you know.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm trying to say that for every action, there's a reaction. So one of the actions is a no action. We're not acting, and we're not even looking. Our attention's not even there. So we're creating the space. It's a dance, see? Here's the doers that are doing and taking and grabbing and greedy and all those things, and they're industrialists and what. And here we are just backing off, giving them lots of space to work more and more and more. You know, it's kind of a dance that we're in the space. It's just like when you're in the ballroom dancing with a woman. You create a space, she steps into it. She creates a space, you step into it.
Like that saying, the only thing needed for evil to thrive is for good men to sit back and do nothing. That's kind of what you're saying.
I like that. You know, I'm saying that. I'm definitely saying that. And that's a part of my agenda is I want to say, hey, I want to say that loud and clear. And saying, okay, there is a point where we want to open our contraction, right? And we want to say that activity shouldn't be anxiety-based or contraction-based. And so it shouldn't be a reaction. It should be an action.
A creative action from something deeper.
Yeah, so if we make a creative action of including people and let it become bigger than the action of unincluding people, let our action become bigger of including people.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know how it's going to look. I don't know how it's going to look.
Yeah, I agree. We're on the same page. Last time we spoke, we touched on this and we were calling it yoga of service, that if there's an engaged self-inquiry and spirituality that doesn't retreat from the world. This is why I'm personally drawn to the tantric approach, and not tantric as in energy and chakras or sex, but the tantric approach that doesn't negate the world to find the absolute and the world is an illusion, but rather that approach that embraces the world, conscious embrace, and to serve God in others. That's one of the things I really love about Jesus' teaching. Is, you know, the priest in the temple said to Jesus, asked the priest in the temple, "Tell me, what is the teaching?" And the priest answered, "To love the Lord thy God with all thy mind, all thy heart, and all thy soul." And that is turning within, that you just expressed. That we do that. We turn off the television, and we ignore the politicians, and we ignore the third world countries where you know what, during this interview, you know, a child has died of starvation every 5 seconds or something, and the statistics probably way higher. And all the people around the world who died of other things needlessly and with pain and suffering, who never had access to any kind of beauty in their lives. So Jesus,
it might only be 5 cents worth of some kind of medicine and that's, you know.
And Jesus answered to this priest, and I think this is it's more important today that we hear this and consider this and maybe attempt to live it. Jesus answered to the priest, "You're very close to the kingdom of heaven." He said, "You're close." He said, "But there's one more piece to this. You know, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself." And to me, that completes the circuit. And it doesn't take us out of the world. Actually, it brings you squarely into the world, and it causes you to. It's an invitation to face the contraction, to enter into the embrace, and that it's saying that you will face the contraction that is there, and you will face, but it's not doing it solely materialistically. It's not just, you're not just approaching the world to change the world. You only do that with the deeper, with the deeper understanding. And that's where our actions can be not a reaction to the outer phenomena, but a creative act born of a recognition of the wholeness, which would be loving the Lord with all our heart, mind, and soul. That is to be in the infinite. And then I see Richard Miller and David Rivers aren't separate. So, if I'm helping Richard Miller in some way, then I'm helping God, and I'm helping David Rivers. It's very different than if it's two separate entities, and Dave Rivers has an agenda, and it comes from a different space. No one probably could tell the difference in that action. There may be two people both serving in a soup kitchen, and one of them may be coming from a space of loving thy neighbor as thyself and seeing God in the other, and the other person may be there because he thinks it makes him a good person, I guess. But I think they're fundamentally different, and I think the contemplation of that deeper connected space and the service actions that come out of that would be fundamentally different. That's what we call the yoga of service. And I mean, it's a seed idea that's been planted in me, and it's clearly the same. From what I hear, the same. You're excited by the same possibility, and I don't know where that could lead. It's very exciting.
Yeah, precisely. That's the missing part of thy neighbor as thyself.
Yeah,
it just gets left off, or we think it's priority 1 and priority 2, and I'll get to 2 later. But let me work on 1.
On 1 first. Yeah.
But they're not.
He didn't say. Yeah, he didn't say.
Okay, first do this, and then you'll be able to love your neighbor.
Yeah.
No, he didn't say that at all.
Yeah, and you can connect it to the Buddha too. I mean, the Buddha said, if you want enlightenment, you need to want it for everyone. It's one of the Buddha's concepts. You can't just want enlightenment for yourself, and that you should. Not that you should, but you need to be engaged in compassion, and Buddhist people in general are often engaged in a lot of creative, compassionate acts. So
that anomaly is kind of uncomfortable, because spirituality says I'm so high and I have such pure motives, but really the separation is just glaring. Mm-hmm. And so then you kind of want to just say that, and I guess you have to say it in a kind way, or otherwise it doesn't really serve anyone, or it's not very effective. Mm. So then that's a big agenda of Never Not Here, is to try to say that, and also to try to say, well, where does spirituality become relevant? Where does the rubber hit the road? Yeah. Where do we get any traction with this? Mm-hmm. Why is it that so few people are really into this? Mm-hmm. Because it's jargoned in a certain way. So then that's my belief that if we would have different venues and go to other people besides seekers, we could say it in a different way, and then we could spread it out a little bit more. Absolutely. And so then that's one of my big agendas.
Yeah.
And then if I wasn't here down under, I would probably be in Occupy, because that's a big heart space that's being created right now. Mm-hmm. And it's like a space where basically our message is, I care about you. Mm-hmm. Right, and now we're calling it the 99%, but then we have to eventually call it the 100%, because we can't disclude anyone.
Yeah.
Right. Mm. So then that's a big thing, And then I have all kinds of theories about why doesn't somebody make a beta test about another kind of an economy, another kind of society, another kind of an organization, different kind of institutions, different kind of legal systems. Stuff, smaller countries, and that's why I was so excited about Australia. But maybe you have to go to even a way smaller country. Maybe you have to go to, someone that has 2 million inhabitants instead of 22, or maybe you have to go to 200,000. Go to Iceland, or go somewhere where someone's going to test a new kind of a monetary system that's not based on speculation. Of course, we talked about scarcity, but scarcity to me is all just the money, because money won't work if things aren't scarce. Mm-hmm. So there has to be a different kind of distribution system for creating a no scarcity.
I mean, to talk about creativity, there's one thing that is a fact about money, is that it's a human invention. It's a human creation. We created money. So there can't be a scarcity of money. When we've invented it, we created it.
No, I don't say a scarcity of money. That's even one of the bad parts, that you could just keep printing it. But I mean, the bad, what I'm talking about is scarcity. It means that if a good or a service is abundant, it has no value. And so then you can't distribute it through money, because it won't pay for the distribution, or for the transport, or for the packaging, or anything. Yeah. So you have to do that some other way. Now we could think you'd have to do it through the government or something, like saying, okay, everyone's going to get food, everyone's going to get medicine, and somehow make enough of it so that there's enough for everybody. Because if we do it by selling it and keep the price at a level where it actually pays the people who are in activity to sell it, then a lot of people are going to be cut out, and then it's scarce. And then if it's not really scarce, we're going to have it obsolete. So it can be scarce again because
Mm.
we're making a new kind of computer that's way faster. We'll put in new software so the old one doesn't work anymore and all that stuff, right? So then that's just because money is what the driver is. And that's not because that's not really greed. That's just a game we called
Exchange.
and distribution. And that's how it works.
Mm.
And then also things like herbal medicines are never going to get developed because who's going to take it into the FDA and get it passed and all that stuff? You don't even need to pass it. You can just start using it, but you can't say anything about it or you can't explain how to use it because the doctors say, no, that's quackery.
And right at the same time, the very patented drugs are often chemical replicas of plants that they find in the Amazon by speaking to the medicine men. It's incredible.
Yeah.
We're having the wool pulled over our eyes there.
Yeah, not really. It's just the system, see? But all these institutions could be recreated, but they can't be recreated worldwide. So then you need what's called a beta test. Like someone has to make things small, right, and try them out and learn by their errors and stuff like that. And then well, I mean, even smaller countries like Germany got some packaging laws where they said, if I know right, I'm just going to say this, whether it's right or not, but I mean, where manufacturers had to recycle the packaging and take it back somehow. So then they started to invent new packaging that recycles easier, right? And then one time, California wrote a law that said, okay, next year, by year so-and-so, 10% of the cars sold here have to be zero emission. Well, that means electric car, right? And then instead of creating zero emission cars, they did create 200,000 of them and sold them in California. But equal to the money they invested in those cars, they invested in going to the Supreme Court and striking down that law. And then they took those cars back and they crushed them.
Wow.
And they said, well, that's better. Let's just get the law off the books.
Yeah.
So that's the solution of the American companies.
Yeah. Wow. It's incredible.
Yeah.
That's the madness of this world that we live in,
Yeah. Well, no, that's the distribution. That's a distribution system that says things have to be scarce, and that also that our plant means like all our fixtures and our factories and stuff have to be somehow amortized and used up before we discard them. Because if they change the technology too fast, then we don't get use out of our whole billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of assets are no longer assets. Mm-hmm. So in a way, rich people run the country and do all those things because they're the ones, anyone that has wealth doesn't want to lose it, right? Mm-hmm. And so then they're the ones that try to keep the stability where, things happen in the same way.
As it is.
But I mean, you can't say that's evil. It's just like, that's a problem of wealth, and ownership is one of the big problems, see? Because wealth is capital that's pulled out of the economy. Mm-hmm. And the only way to inject it back in is through banks, and banks mean loans. So now the whole world is a debtor. And they're still looking for more debts because I got such a pile of capital. Individual and corporate wealth is so big that there's nowhere to put it. We don't need it. So then that's when they're trying to get everyone in debt. They got credit cards, they got mortgages, they got student debts, they got international aid. It's all debt. And they're looking for new schemes. We can call that greed, but it's just part of the structure that there's this huge mountain of what we call capital. And you're not going to just put it in your basement. You're not going to just wallpaper the walls with certificates. You got to put it back in the bank and get them to make a return on it. Yeah. And that's when ruthless things happen with the bond markets and stock markets, and I don't know. That's the whole thing. It's just the game. Like I like to say, I guess I'm talking too much, but if we had Scrabble and we put it out on the table and we all start playing Scrabble, in a way we're all going to be thinking about philosophy and words and what words mean, and we're going to be thinking about abstract structures, right? If we get another game and we call it Monopoly and we're all going to play that, then we're going to say, I want all the hotels. And at the end of the game, it's no fun because I have them all and you have none, right? And I'm going to wipe you out. I can get you the last one, I want your last nickel, right? That's the game, and that's the institutions, right? Yeah. If we had a game in U.S. called Clue, and you had to figure out who was a murderer, Was it the butler? Did he use the lead pipe? Did it happen in the drawing room? you had three things to figure out, right? What was the weapon, who was the murderer, and where was it? If we were all playing Clue, then we'd all be into conspiracy theory. Who's doing it to us, Who is the culprit in here, And we'd talk about the Illuminati, and we'd talk about chemtrails, and we'd talk about, what's that thing in Alaska where they shoot rays up there, HAARP, and all that kind of crap, right? And so then it just depends on the game we're playing, is what humanity is willing to engage in, And it's not our roots. We're not that way. But somebody's got to, like I say again, a beta test of making a new structure. Let's have a new board game. Put it in some country, and let's see what we can do with it.
Yeah, and I'm certain that there are many of those structures that have been developed and designed, and that people want to propagate. It brings up an interesting point that Lao Tzu, to bring it back to the spiritual philosophical aspect, Lao Tzu had the poem that said, if once we start giving the people rules and do's and don'ts and rewards and punishments, that's when things start to go astray. When you let things unfold organically, and it comes back to that, could the whole world, could the whole society live without a blueprint if we were living from a deeper consciousness? I don't have the answer to that, but that does seem to be what is placed before us, and we could have a new blueprint based on a deeper consciousness, but it would still be a blueprint because there's no possible way to get everybody at the same level of awareness to then everybody to be happy with and not find that blueprint natural. It could be the most enlightened guy in the world, but he might have type A enlightenment, and there's type B and type C and type D, because if you speak to enough spiritual, teachers, you see that there's different takes on all of this. So
I totally agree, that there needs to be a blueprint, and there needs to be a new blueprint, and that's what I was calling about a beta test.
I know, yeah.
And in everything, because you said, okay, we believed in reward and punishment. Even that is a structure of human punishment and jail and all that stuff.
That's what I'm saying.
It's all baloney.
It's a blueprint.
Total baloney.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. People say that there's something big going to happen in, this period of history that we're in, and that the structure is set to collapse, and actually that it's a stacked deck, that it's set up for this to happen, and that something new has to come of that, and who knows what that's going to look like, and if that's even possible to do.
Well, that's terrible. That the terrible part of that is even well-meaning people are rooting for the collapse because they have no clue of how to change anything. And I'm just saying, just do a test in your own community, in your own family, somewhere, do something, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying, no, let's just do nothing because we can see that it's going toward the edge of the cliff, and this is going to be the next place. And I'm saying, look, guys, that's not going to be pretty. Don't go there. Because you're thinking, okay, you read in the scriptures and you say that transformation can't happen unless there's a dissolution. So then I'm for the dissolutions. It's like the Christians, because they got revelations in their Bible, right? And then they're saying, okay, now's the time. Finally, it's going to be me, because 20 generations have gone by since that was written, and none of them got to experience it. And so they're going to be so happy to see earthquakes and typhoons and pollution and, radiation poisoning and who knows if not war and all these things. But come on, that's a load of crap. Just start doing things and start getting involved, and just, this is how I see it, This is the wake-up call that I want to talk about, because that's where I want to really pin the spirituality and say, look, these guys, so many of them just say, no, transformation happens after dissolution. I'm just going to sit here and wait for it.
But dissolution can happen, and it's implicit in the structure of existence, if I may say, relative to our self. It's inherent that transformation, in the sense of the dissolution of the self, happens in action, because that embrace that we're speaking about, to come full circle, that embrace is an action. If for you and I to sit and be together, or for me to literally, even for me to embrace you, or for me to embrace someone, or for me to embrace the ideal that myself and the other aren't separate, that's going to cause me, even just physiologically and psychologically and emotionally, to have to move in a new way. And the self that is the self-contraction is a configuration of psychosomatic affect and that contracted feeling. So that's literally why in the yoga of service, it looks like it's just karma yoga, but it's also bhakti yoga, because in that sense, you're devoted to this deeper principle of union and of oneness. And it looks like it might be just karma yoga, but it's also jnana yoga, because you're literally willing to confront your contraction and to love the other anyway, which means where Jesus said, no greater love have a man or woman than to lay down their life for another. And what he means is that to love in spite of the fear, to move in action that is from wholeness and for wholeness in spite of the fear. Like you said, not later when the fear is gone, fear being synonymous with separation and the contraction, but literally the action of the love, by living that way, that the fear won't be able to sustain itself. The contraction won't be able to be there.
I love it. Everything resolves in action. So then if I would preach engagement. I would preach expression. I would preach action. I'd say, now's the time. What are you waiting for? And then I would say all the in a way, everything that's wrong is an action, an expression, and an activity, and an engagement, right? Everything is wrong.
Yes.
But maybe it only rules because everything that's right has no action, has no expression, has no engagement. So then somehow when those two meet, then they can waltz together, right? But before they meet, when the one is pulled off, the other one has a ball. It just explodes, right?
Yeah, it's disengaged. We've disengaged from the love that where we are one with the other. And
nothing good can happen out of inaction. I don't know. That's what I say. Because if you're really, really somehow awakened or somehow at peace, there's no reason to stop action. There's no reason to say no. You could say there's no reason to say yes. There's no reason to say no.
Well, there is a reason to say yes. And the reason to say yes is that we see that the children suffering and the people dying of diseases that can be cured are myself. And they are the infinite consciousness. I mean, Mother Teresa, apparently she's a really beautiful example for this conversation, that she had a glimpse. She had a mystical vision, or a satori, we could say. And she translated her satori into Christian language. She saw Christ literally in everyone as a direct encounter in consciousness. But it didn't last. But she knew. And she trusted that vision, she trusted that realization, and then she lived a life of action based on what she'd seen. So she wasn't helping poor, lonely, starving people only. She knew that what was essential in the people she was helping, she knew that what was vital in them and what was tender, what was really there in those flowing through that being and giving life to that hunger, and giving what was aware of the pain was Christ. And that's where Jesus said, that whatever you do for the least person, you do for me. So he wasn't speaking of me, the person, Jesus. He was speaking of from in the first person sense, that what you do for the divine, which is yourself. So she's a good example.
Well, you really said a lot of things, didn't we?
Yeah.
Thanks for asking me all these questions.
Thank you.
Getting all this stuff out on the map there.
Thank you for inviting me to interview you. It's been an honor. in our basement here.
Your own basement, you deserve that honor, right? You can do whatever you want here.
And who would have thought that this, I mean, this is a storage area and there's all kinds of, mess everywhere. And, it's just a little rickety home in the suburbs of Newcastle, Australia. And here, with a little bit of equipment and some love and trust and communication, we've delved into the deep. We've fathomed into the depths of what truly has value in life, and it's been I'm honored to share that with you. Thank you.
Maybe it's as deep as you can go at this moment, or as deep as you need to go. And if there is junk around here, you guys don't see it. You only see the love. So we tricked you.
All right. Shall we say thank you? Thank you very much, Richard Miller, for sharing your spiritual journey and sharing so openly, so much with myself and with your audience. You're dearly loved, and it's been a great honor for me to be able to interview Richard Miller, who so many of your friends get to share in seeing you interview people. Please forgive my mistakes during the interview. I made a few, and it was a lot of fun, and I'm deeply grateful. Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, David. And thank all of you. So, without you guys, we wouldn't even be doing this. So bye for now.